Jim Allister joining us today. Here's another story about public money, Jim.
Quite shocking. I think that what's urgently required is that the audit office should be brought in to investigate the setting up and the administration of this fund, because £22 million, some of it into pockets that seem very deep to start with, and I think that the public, particularly those within the public who have struggled with one-man businesses, haven't got a penny, maybe because they don't have a business premise that is rated for business. And I've had many constituents like that. People who have been refused, taxi drivers, all sorts of people who are finding it very hard to keep a roof over their head and to put bread on the table, and yet they hear that elite sporting organisations and golf clubs are lavished with funds of this level. To think, Royal County Down getting £1.5 million, to think of the GAA getting £7.5 million over 177 clubs. You look down that list, you see somewhere like obscure places like Derry Gomley club, £72,000. I'm quite sure there's some struggling businesses around Derry Gomley that didn't get £72,000. Trowick, £106,000. It really is quite astounding.
Well, as well as you scrutinising the GAA clubs, are you scrutinising the Irish League clubs?
Yes, I think that those too. They got
Ballymena United, £307,000. Coleraine, £366,000. Crusaders, over $500,000, $541,000 for Crusaders.
Yeah, the IFA got £6.5 million. The IRFU got £2.25 million. Golf got over £4 million. And it seems to be, and I suspect this is part of the problem, it was the governing bodies, without a departmental scrutiny, I suspect, of the component parts, who put in these applications and said, such and such a club, these are their needs, etc. But what were their needs based on? And someone has already said in this programme, with this department, it's all about objective need. There doesn't seem to be much objective here. But the other point I wanted to make is, this is a failure of scrutiny by the Communities Committee in Stormont. We shouldn't have been reading about this in the Belfast Telegraph or hearing it on the Nolan Show. We should have been hearing about this from the Scrutiny Committee if they were scrutinising. How did this scheme, which we should have been scrutinised by a committee in Stormont, get through unscathed without tough questions being asked and answered? So I think it is also a failure in that regard. But my biggest irritation with this is the fact, when I compare and contrast with so many struggling one-man businesses who have just been thrown to the wolves, and these clubs, it seems it was never too much bother to give them as much as they said they needed. I think it's quite appalling. The other point is, what is
the logic, Jim, in the Northern Ireland PLC putting a cap? And I've asked the team to give Michael Dean a call, the restaurateur Michael Dean a call. What is the logic of putting a cap on what businesses could get through a grant? For example, I think the grants were capped, depending on what your rates were, at £10,000 and £25,000.
That's right.
And yet there's been no cap on sporting bodies. How does that add up?
Well, some of these sporting bodies might have also got that £10,000 to £25,000 grant if they qualified on the rates base. So this mightn't be the only grant they got. Also, the other point that interests me is many of these clubs make their money from the hospitality sector. There were separate programs to aid the hospitality sector. Did any of these clubs get hospitality money under that aegis? I think, is this indeed the whole story, bad as it is? I think we need answers for this. But I've said a number of times from the start of this that the Department of Communities seems to have been the most fated department when it came to the handing out of funding, and to now discover that it's been handed out by them through Sport NI in this fashion only compounds the concerns that one has. And I do think that there needs now to be a thorough investigation by the Audit Office, and I think the Scrutiny Committee at Stormont needs to take a good look at itself as to how this got passed.
What about the money? Should it be paused?